All right, I think we're actually doing this with, I would say, one quarter of the number of tech problems, Alessandro, that we had last time. Alessandro, my very wonderful friend, we are here today to discuss the review of AlphaSchool, or maybe more specifically, AlphaSchool as we understand it through this recent ACX review that has been in the on the Astral Codex 10 book review, and sorry, everything but a book review contest. For this year, the very first one. It has attracted a heck of a lot of attention. In fact, just as we were about to start recording this, Scott has posted the second of the reviews, which was originally not going to make it, he said, but it's about school. It is a review of schooling, and because of the excitement generated by the first one, which I've got to tell you, I did not have with my book review that ended up winning the ACX book review contest. Did not get this much attention. I don't know. My corner of the internet is absolutely abuzz with this. You and I have deep, deep agreements on most things. It's one of the things that's most irritating about our friendship. But I think on this, we actually might succeed in really disagreeing with one another. So, I'm going to try to play up the pro Alpha School side in this, but also I think I'm a lot more pro Alpha School than you are. Um, why don't you just open with guns blazing?
It's important roles that I really liked, surprisingly, because in our pre-discussion, it was quite clear that probably you appreciate this model more than me. But there are some issues that, strong points that I was fascinated by.
So why don't we ping pong back and forth? I don't know, 10 seconds each. Just we'll do it. We'll do this 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times. So make sure that they're small ones. Things that you like about what you understand about this school. For listeners, you should read the ACX post. We'll try to put a link on when we pop this up there. It's long and you can listen to it, and it's great. You should totally listen to it. You know what? Heck, let's not even give any background then. So yeah, just ping pong back and forth. Alessandro, you first.
Well, the way in which this learning system can work on memory and memorization.
Yeah, I like the amount of focus that kids seem to have when they are in school.
Also, the capability of the system to provide flexible, on the spot, one-on-one feedback during learning, which is, I mean, remarkable.
I like so what are you specifically thinking in that? Like the Brazilians?
Uh, but in more wider than that, also
Okay.
the interaction with the software, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I like the I like the fact that you can go faster, that people are being kept near the edge of their in their proximal zone of development, where things are still challenging for them.
Also, the attention they pay on students' agency, especially for the the choice component.
In line with that, I really like that they seem to deeply respect students' time, at least compared to a traditional school.
I also like the idea of, in the morning we do this, the academics, and then there is the afternoon for other educational aims. And, I like that model.
I like that they have a warm up. This wasn't into much depth, but a warm up in the morning where they sort of cohere as a group of people together before they go off and are on their screens doing their one on one exercises.
Also, in general, the strong and clear need to back up their educational model with research.
Yeah.
that needs to be taken seriously, even if you disagree about how they do that. But that idea is remarkable. So
I love how open, transparent they seem to be about the data that they have.
yeah,
Have you ever seen any school do that?
no, honestly,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
a strong point.
yeah.
Um, and maybe this is more of the review, but reading that, there was also this mm, attempt to intellectual honesty and openness, uh, and which is, if you want, part of the research mindset that's behind this. That's rare in educational change. So it needs to be taken as an example.
Sorry, say that the first part of that again. I think I got distracted in the middle.
Not only the idea, to do research and back up things with data, but more than that, what I appreciated is also the research mindset. So what we need to find is not data that supports our ideas, but it's
Mhm.
also to consider potential problems,
Yeah,
weaknesses, and
yeah,
work on that. So
yeah,
this is a scientific mindset behind it,
yeah.
which is not so common in the educational field.
I will say, as a consequence of that, the author has this bit where he chronicles the evolution of the school over time, these different windows. It starts in, I need to remember, I need to have this timeline better in my head as we think about and work toward opening up Egan schools. But the 2010-ish, and there's this whole long period where the instruction in the morning is teacher led, and they only gradually go to using totally or almost totally software based platforms that are one on one for that. So they're actually willing to change a lot with this. They're willing to upend their own. They've shown the ability to transform their own model based on the data. Which who does that?
Exactly. So this is another aspect of the research mindset behind it. I agree. So the scientific, and I also appreciated the idea that they have some, core principles. Let's say a model to simplify, but then it takes shape in different kind of schools. Uh, you know, that was also interesting to read. Um, yeah,
I think which is something that you and I are interested in doing with Egan schools and Egan micro schools. I like that some of the things, but these are cherry picked, but some of the things that are cherry picked that the kids do in the afternoons are amazing. Like we learned to sail, and so now we're actually going to go on a giant sailing adventure. So that's not an afternoon thing, that's another thing. So here, I'll just do two at once. But the Airbnb,
yeah.
where the fifth graders actually manage a real Airbnb, it's amazing. It's incredible. They deserve to be applauded for that, regardless of what other crap we dish out on this in ways that we differ from them. Holy crap! Good job, people. Good job,
Uh,
Alpha School.
Yeah, I think the the best way to do this compliment from my side is to say that that could be part of vegan.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
some of those stuff in my
huh,
head,
huh,
I could read them. Okay, here I see vegan tools behind this, vegan principles.
huh.
And by the way, there is an example that we also shared before reading the review for an afternoon activity that came up in the review that is about cooking. So the idea is to
Yeah,
read ancient historical recipes and then also try them out in a kind of a history cooking workshop.
yeah.
That was a very, I mean, maybe we did the same example when we thought, okay, what we could do in the afternoon in a nigger school. So that was very interesting to me.
Yeah,
So yeah, I agree with you.
yeah.
Some examples are, yeah, educationally very, very appealing.
I'll say that my last one is the most problematic one here. Problematic. I might be using that term ironically. I can't even tell anymore. That they have the balls to use straightforward incentives the way that you might at like a Chuck E. Cheese, the way that you might. Sorry, this is totally an American creation. They with this like you get bucks when you get over 80% on one of your little lessons, and then they're worth like essentially 10 $1 is worth alpha bucks is worth 10 cents approximately, and then you get to save these up and cash these in, and that this the author unveils is the actual secret sauce or part of the actual secret sauce and what makes the motivation aspect of the whole school work. I have profoundly ambiguous opinions on this, which I hope that we'll talk about. But I love that somebody is actually just saying, you know what, this works. Let's do it. I think like it shifts the Overton window for the rest of us. Okay, let's dive in. So let's dive into it.
Yeah, because also my pros are okay. But see, there were many pros from my side too.
I was surprised to hear that many from you. I thought I was going to win this competition and just exhaust you.
So you, you
Instead, I
you want
decided
it, but just you know, not so much. So okay. Then do we want to start with incentives
yeah,
to have
let's
a
do it.
discussion around?
Yeah,
Because I think
yeah,
it's one of the core elements
yeah.
of this. Oh,
Alessandro, in one sentence,
ah,
what is your opinion on using naked incentives like this in education?
um, they work. It's not that they don't
Wow,
work.
that's the greatest possible.
Mm-mm. Wait. The problem is, the first problem is, yeah, they work, but what do they work for? So the first problem I have here is a philosophical problem,
What's your opinion on landmines, Alessandro? They
uh,
work.
right? No, but let's be serious. One, there is a general philosophical issue, which is it's very important to me because it has practical consequences. That is in my perspective, which is not only mine, it was clearly Egan's, but it's also in the contemporary debate. I'm
Mhm.
thinking again about Gerbista again. Um, when we think about education and educational problems and issues, we need to clarify the goals and the aims we have in mind. Um, and that is not an easy domain, right? We need to be clear about what the goals, the educational goals are in our discussion or in the school we want to create or in the, in the lessons we want to do or whatever. Um, and then we can think about what works for these aims.
Here's what
Thinking,
I. Oh, sorry,
right?
sorry. Good. Yeah.
Thinking that you can say just it works because data backs this up doesn't make sense philosophically in education because we need to clarify the aims first. So, first of all, there is a formal problem here that was throughout all the review and I think behind the alpha model. And not only the alpha model, it's something very common in the educational discourse. But to me, it's incomplete and it can generate a lot of practical issues. So that's
Hmm.
the first thing that I don't like about it works. So let's do. There is a sentence. I don't care about what is good. I care about what works. Yes, but works for what?
Does the
We need,
author say that? I'm actually looking at this part right now, and I see the system seems to work.
yeah, but there is a sentence where he says, uh, maybe the incentives are not good or are not beauty, are not beautiful, but the problem is not what is good. The problem is if they work or not. Yes, but work for what? If you don't clarify what is good, what is your educational aim, what it means to be an educated mind, to quote
Hmm.
Egan, it doesn't make sense the word work. It doesn't make
Okay.
sense.
Okay.
Okay, so one sentence, it wasn't one sentence, sorry.
Well, I mean, I think that most of our readers are probably howling at you right now about that, but then our linguistics informed readers will know that what a sentence is really just a sort of arbitrary thing, and you can just plop in a bunch of semicolons. Uh, it's an ellipses after when I break in. We could rejigger that as well. Here, let me. My worry in this is that because I there's something like deeply that I agree with you about this. But my worry is that the way that we usually express this is comes across as very academic, right? So that was very sort of theoretical, you know. Let me try to take a guess as to what I think is at the heart of your thinking about this, because it's at the heart of mine. That giving naked incentives, I like that phrase, to doing lessons well. Note, not just running through a lesson, but getting over 80% in the lesson. Um, that works for getting kids through more lessons, but it doesn't work for getting them to care about the lesson. It doesn't work for getting them to. I could maybe say some more things, but maybe they'd be in danger of sounding poetic. So I'll just say to care about the lesson.
Yes. In fact, what I did was exactly academic-ish, let's say, more of philosophical premises.
Hmm.
And then, of course, you have the consequences. If you don't clarify your aims carefully, okay, then you risk to fall into some holes. In this case, to me, yes, the first one about naked incentives, right? That is that they work, and it was clear since behaviorism somehow, since Skinner, in a sense, that they work. And um, in this situation, for example, in increasing the number of lessons and the speed and the intensity and the focus on those, but they don't cover other aims. For example, from an EGAM perspective, something that is extremely important, right? Exactly, caring about what you are learning. So not only, you know, being able gradually to acquire mastery or self-realization, right, in doing practice over something, but also, and maybe mainly or mostly, to go through this, to do practice, so to even suffer, to do work, hard work, because you love that stuff, because you care, because it matters, because you see the beauty, the value, the importance of that. To me, that's not optional in education. To me, that should be something to work on in education. And
Okay, so
naked,
sorry,
and
go for it.
this maybe this tool, this strategy, the naked incentives, right? So giving bucks, I don't think it's a way to get there. Maybe the risk is that even it could even be a way to go against that, because the
Okay.
implicit of it is that you do it because you get the bucks, not that because it is beautiful enough to do math or to whatever. So
So
yes,
what I'm hearing you say is that it is good to have this knowledge. Actually, I'm not hearing you say that. Can you say that?
it's good to have this knowledge. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
it's not the point. Yeah,
It's good to have this knowledge. There are other goods that, in fact, are higher goods that are part of what you and I mean when we say, what is a good education? Um,
exactly.
and the knowledge is part of it, but the caring is part of it.
Yeah,
And that this, not only does this incentive system not address the caring, it also may wall it off or make it harder, the caring harder to get to. Now, you're saying that, but you're implying a comparative. Harder than what to get to?
no, and it's the fact. What I can do here is just, if we want to respect the scientific mindset that we praised before, what I can do here is just to raise a counter hypothesis, let's say, or an objection that needs to be then backed up by empirical research. But I can also say that in the review, at least, and I think also in the way in which alpha schools present themselves and are organized, they don't uh, face this issue. That's what I can say. So
Yeah.
among the richness of data they provide,
Yeah.
they don't go there. They face other potential problems, at least not they, the author of the review, um, faces other potential problems of the naked incentives, which is intrinsic motivation, the potential lack of intrinsic motivation. And if you want, we can go there. But other things are not addressed. And that's a problem to me. I mean, I have another idea of education. I don't know if it's better or not, but I have another idea, another, aim in my mind.
I'm where I think my version of what you're saying is that I consider what Alpha School does with negative incentives to be much, much better than what most people get at the end of their educations. This pushes people up into the 95th percentile, perhaps. I don't know if it's 90th or 99th, so I'll arithmetically compromise with 95th percentile of education. And this is understanding that they do it faster. Um, an interesting question for me is, which the author, I do not believe, I've read it once and listened to it once. I don't think that they address this, but so then what do they do after they finish? So congratulations, like you've beat the science curriculum. What are you going to do next? Like, what do they do next? But sorry, that's a side, an important sort of side issue. Um, that this brings people up to the 95th percentile, let's say, but it actually might make the higher percentiles even harder to get to than ordinary. But still, I would much prefer that everyone in the country do this thing rather than go on the way that they have been going. That's, I think, my take on this. If we could snap our fingers and then just make everybody, all schools, immediately transition over to this, assuming that this really does scale. And Freddie DeBoer has some excellent, in being him biting comments in the comments chat here about asking whether it would scale with like coal miners, kids in Appalachia.
Uh-huh.
But if it did scale, yes, I'm in favor of switching over to this. What is your answer to that question?
Um, I can agree with you. See, this is a concrete example of
Okay.
consequence of the philosophical point I had at the beginning. It depends on the aims you have, right? What is good education? If getting people so, with this speed in the highest percentile in these performances, right, is good education. Yes. You are saying this is, I don't know if this is good education, this is better than what exists. I can
Yeah.
agree with you, but then we move to another question, which is yes, but what do we need to aim for? What is good education for us, or what is better than the existing? Yeah, I agree with you that probably this is better than much of the educational systems out there. So yes, definitely. Maybe I'd say I have another idea of good education which goes in another direction. So
Yeah.
what I'd like to do is not to at least to open up a conversation with AlphaSchool to engage and see if our ideas can find a connection or whatever. But that's another discourse, right? So I agree with you. Yeah, if you have this aim, this seems to work, then we can also open this discussion because there is a problem also inside the role model to me that is raised up in the review. If you
Okay.
want, we can on
I
that.
want to talk about that, but I want to also say that I feel like I might be really wrong when I say that even though this rockets, let's imagine this rockets everybody to what is currently the 95th percentile, but then if assuming that is right, um, I might be wrong when I say that, but then it might make it harder to get to the even the highest percentiles, because one of the things that probably you come out of this kind of education with, specifically because it's super traditionalist and also they have forgetting curves and spaced repetition, is you come out with this real mass of knowledge about this. And it is easier. You will read better if you have this knowledge. You will read scientific texts better. You may even be more interested. No, sorry, you will be more interested in science than you would if you went through a more common, ordinary sort of science education. Um, I have major qualms with the science education that IXL gives, and actually I want to talk about with you and show you. But I still think that there's some likelihood that just people who are really smart in this sort of old school traditionalist sense. Am I correct in thinking that this is like a certain branch of traditionalism, educational traditionalism on steroids?
Well, maybe yes. Mm, Still so. Especially if we focus on the morning side of things, on the morning
Yeah,
half.
yeah, yeah,
So the academic part, right?
yeah. Yeah, it's
Yes, because we are
traditionalism in the
doing
morning, progressivism in the
eh,
afternoons, business in front, party in back. It's the mullet of educational systems.
in a sense, and we could also discuss about that. But yeah, so in this sense, it works, and it's even remarkable. Um, Maybe we can also discuss this point because there is an interesting objection that is considered in the review, which is um, which kind of learning outcomes, right, you can cover in this system, focusing always on the academic side on the morning, right? And because also all the data, no, that we are considered, that they consider, are based on standardized tests,
Mhm.
right? Some of those are internal, so are related to their own system of activities. So you see the progression of the activities the kids do, right?
Mhm.
But it is a bit, if you want, is a bit circular because you could tell them, well, they learn to play with your software better. I mean, I don't care, right? But
Yeah,
then they also have the standardized national tests, I think, right?
the MAP tests, the measure of academic
Yeah.
progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're more interesting, and the
Yes.
data are good. But
Yes.
then the author has this question: but what do these tests measure? Which kind of skills or
Hmm.
knowledge or competences? And he says, well, some of those, but not everything. And so he has a list of the things that are out. And he says, well, for these, there is the afternoon, right? Like, for example, critical thinking or problem solving or this debate, so that kind of skills.
Yeah.
He says, well, we have the afternoon workshop for that.
Yeah.
And that's not so easy from my perspective.
How
It's
so?
not. Two reasons mostly.
What do you mean
One,
when you say? What do you mean when you say not easy? Because apparently they're doing it.
yeah, but no, but it's not easy to say that through those workshops,
Mm,
so the afternoon covers the gaps of the morning
yeah.
in terms of mere learning. And so not, as we said before, because of mentoring or other educational aims. No, in terms of getting, solid knowledge and fundamental skills. So in being qualified, right? Um, it's not so easy that the afternoon does the trick. Um, because first of all, as far as I understand, but correct me if I'm wrong, in the different schools, the afternoon activities are arranged differently.
Yes.
And what he does, the author, when he goes into this point, is using so he does cherry picking. So he uses as examples the afternoon activities that are run in the academic version of the schools. Yes, and in the others. So in the sports one. So I can just say I'd like to know more about their educational thinking here, to you know get a theoretical explanation and maybe even some research backup to show how the afternoon activities in the different schools can cover up for the gap in learning in the morning,
Hmm.
the skills that are not covered in the morning.
I mean, I think it would be good to. Probably we don't want to take the time to do this right now, but let's leave it as an exercise for the reader to say what of social studies is left out of. I will do a time, not time, but I will do a fast-paced multiple choice test that will teach me the social studies material and that will quiz me on it. What of the wonderful world of history and social studies is left out of that experience? Uh, we could say, I mean, I don't say many nice things about social studies, so I'll speak about history, which that is trying to get to. Uh, but holy crap, like actually having a conception of yourself as a product of history. The author actually touches on this, right? Not seeing like the big things that push history forward. Not falling in love with and finding, in fact, like kindred spirits in the dead of the past in a way that can shape your life. That not being inspired by these ideals and ideas, not being led to wonder, like, wait, like, what if the Carthaginians were right? What if Rome was the evil power? What if Moloch and it was the correct god, and we should be sacrificing babies on the tops of mountains? Um, I'll leave it as an exercise for the reader to try to figure out whether I where I stand on that topic. I Right, like there's this entire world that is called humanistic endeavor that is not even effing touched upon in this.
Let's say so claiming that the afternoon covers this.
Yeah,
It could be,
yeah,
but I'd like to know more.
yeah.
And that's where probably I would say that that could be also the point of conjunction between an Egan approach and this approach,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But there is also another issue, maybe more technical, but
sure.
that there is the problem. Because there are general skill, no, like you see critical thinking, problem solving. No? These are examples that the author considers when he says, "Okay, in the afternoon we go there." Yeah, but there is a huge, infinite debate behind this. That is the domain based skill versus general transversal skill.
Yeah.
And, 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 and this debate is important because, to give a practical example, if I work on problem solving, let's say when I run the BNB
Hmm.
uh, in the afternoon, it's not so obvious that I can transfer those skills in my mathematical problem solving. Um, I don't have a definite position in this debate because it's very wide and complicated. There are some people in the psychology domain that think that transversal general skill don't even exist,
Hmm.
right? Uh, but you can also find in scientific debate other people that are on the opposite side of the spectrum, and it's not the place to solve this debate. What I want to say is that this problem is crucial for this educational model. If you claim that what you do in the afternoon fills the gap of your academic learning in the morning, you need to take a clearer position in this debate and give, again, some theoretical and hopefully maybe also empirical support to what you are saying. That's also something that was missing for me when I read this.
Just to compare this to, um, there's something that both you and I really love about this model of splitting the day into.
Ah, yeah.
You and I were talking recently as we were thinking about, okay, how do we set up like the micro school curriculum for Egan education? Well, we were talking about, practical skills, and I was telling you about how when my wife and I ran a micro school, we made lunch together every day. The kids made lunch together every day. And my wife, who was born on a farm and knows actual like farm cooking methods that have been passed down for possibly 1,000 billion years, like taught them some of these things. Like this is like real expertise in cooking that she's passing on. They make bread every day and they made soup and it was delicious. Um, and I was asking you, like, oh, could this become like a significant part of the microschooling experience? And he's like, well, you can Eganize anything, you can do anything, and we could. And then you remembered, wait, like Egan actually talked about this idea of like splitting the school in two, where the morning would be what Egan hilariously referred to as useless knowledge. All of the academics. Egan, arch academic, right? Like arch Platonist, Platonist. I'm sorry, I'm using your pronunciation now. And was just jokingly says like, they use the history, the math, the science, they use this knowledge. And then in the afternoon, like useful knowledge. And so even before reading this, it actually come like the day before I read this to this idea. So we like that idea, but you think that, but what maybe like, given that you're good with that idea, what is in a sentence, if you can this time, what is, how can you nutshell what your problem with what they're doing is by comparison?
Told you, the main problem is that for these two parts, you know, to be to accomplish complex educational aim, okay, you need. Oh,
I apologize. I don't know what just happened, but one of us just cut out. That was interesting. Good, excellent.
I
My
have the
heart can
sentence, so
continue
you
to beat.
lost it.
Yeah, go ahead and say it again. I apologize.
No, it's difficult for me in a nutshell because it's different things that I feel problematic in how they do it. But the main thing is that I have to say I would like to know more about how they how they do that, about the educational thinking behind that.
Okay.
That's
What
I missed some points. It could be done. In fact, it could be very close to what Egan had in mind. Also, it could be, but it doesn't seem clarifying this. For example, how the learning in the morning is enriched and uh, enriched by the learning in the afternoon. For example, one issue, right? Um, it doesn't seem what they feel that's needed to be clarified with their research scientific mindset, and that's what I instead I miss.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, and then I could tell you different problems, but the core is that um, there is something important to clarify here that I didn't find.
My way of maybe saying this, and then I want to jump onto something else in our limited time left, but is that it seems like their take is to go through. It's not that the afternoon is really trying to extend to apply what they did in the morning. It's that the afternoon is a different thing. They want to get the academics out of the way really quickly so they can get to the other stuff, which
Yeah,
will probably be experienced as like the cooler stuff for most people. Does that seem right to you?
yeah. It seems if you take the fundamental aims of education, right?
Hmm.
So academics, developing of the self and socialization. It seems, as they say, okay, academics morning and the rest afternoon. And okay, but then at the same time, if you read the review, the claim is no, 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 but there is a connection because what you miss academically in the
Yeah,
morning, you will
yeah,
find in the afternoon. And I don't understand how.
yeah,
That's so. Is there a
yeah,
connection? Is there not a connection? Is it rhapsodic? Is it
yeah,
emergent? Is it structured? Um,
yeah. This is the
uh,
sort of thing that's easy to claim airily and actually difficult to. I would even just say prove. I'll say like make work here.
yeah,
So what I want to do, because this is like the thing that I hate, that I despise about not Alpha School per se, but about the learning platform that they are really tapping into using, is that I think, oh, here, I'll show. So I had never heard, I think I had heard about this before. Just a second, I'm going to see if this button will work to share my screen. Yes, I think we're seeing, okay. So IXL, I'd heard about IXL before. This is it's trusted by millions of parents. Great, wonderful. So I decided to actually look into this, and I arbitrarily chose some fifth grade science, I think is what I did, because, I run a science teaching business that tries to say, here's like here's some of the heights that we can try to achieve even online for with Egan education. And maybe, this looks totally different than when I did it last time. So I'm wondering if, in fact, this is going to be very different than I did before. Fruits and vegetables. It was the plant part I saw, and it was the plant part. So here, this is I think this might be similar to what I was seeing before. Let me make this a bit smaller. Okay, so start. Select the part of the plant that makes pollen. Okay, great. So I can click on this thing or these things or this thing, and I'm going to click on this thing. Great, and turns out I get it right because everyone should know that this is really great. The part of the plant that will germinate. Okay, germinate mean it's the seeds, right? Okay, so they're going to put this the seeds. Okay, the seeds are in the fruit. Okay, so it's not this fruit, but it's this fruit. These are different questions than I saw the last few times that I was looking at this. So okay, great. So it's the seed part of this. Good work. Select the part of the plant that carries food from the leaves to the rest of the plant. Food from the leaves to the rest. And I want to point out that there's not, the way that they do this, it's not that there is lessons before this. It's that this is what they're doing when they come in. They're trying to answer these questions. And here, so I'll get this one wrong. It carries food from the leaves. Okay, because sunlight is food and it goes to the rest of the plant. So that's going to be the stems because the rest of the plant is going to be the roots. Now that's weird just as a technical thing because I guess the stems still carry it to the fruit. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. This is a weird thing. But if I object to this, it'll seem like my objections here are small. Select the part. Oh, sorry, I said I'll get that wrong. Select the part of the select the part where the plant makes most of its food. So the answer here is the leaves. So I will say it is the seeds right here. Submit. Sorry, incorrect. Wah, wah. The correct answer is, and that shows the leaves. Then there's an explanation. So here's the review of the question, as if I could have forgotten that. Remember, plants make up different are made up of different parts. The flowers, fruit, and seeds help the plant make new plants. The roots, stem, and leaves help the plant make food, get water, and grow. The leaves are where the plant makes most of its food. That's a weird way of saying that. Plants make food through a process called photosynthesis. Are there other parts? Oh, I guess the stems. Okay, because they're green. Anything that's green can do photosynthesis. Plants use a green substance called chlorophyll to get energy from sunlight. They take in carbon dioxide from the air through small openings in their leaves called stomata. Photosynthesis allows plants to use the energy from sunlight to turn carbon energy and water into sugar. So this is, alas, better. I was afraid this would happen. Somewhat better than the things that I was seeing before with this. How do I stop sharing? Like this? Am I back just to myself right now? Okay. Um, so before the questions that I was getting were largely on the realm of tell us the difference of what a fruit is from what a flower is, and which of the two of these makes the seeds. And their big point was that it is well, here, how would you answer that? Which makes the seeds, the flower or the fruit? Yes, that was their phrase. Yeah.
That ambiguity, uh, which makes it right. I don't know because I don't understand the question. So, which makes, in the sense, where is the causal effect? What do we want to know?
So the problem
Maybe.
here is that yeah.
Uh,
Well, so the problem here is that it's an absolute garbage question. The reason that it's hard to answer it is because a fruit is not a different thing from the flower. The fruit is the flower of a plant. This is the deep truth to understand if you want to understand anything about plants. Um, I know this only because because I'm a science teacher, and I even recently did where do I have this here? Apples. So I'm going to pull up something from apples on this. Fruit plants, second Granny Smith, seeds get inside here. So this is from the yeah, here. How do I do this? I hit the share button again, and maybe this will also work. This good here. So I had a lesson that was how do the seeds get inside? Right. Now, at the beginning of this, kids not have any understanding of where the seeds come from, what makes the seeds. I asked the kids these questions. They had all sorts of answers, right? And frankly, they were all incorrect. This is, by the way, the one lesson that this year that we warned parents about because it's explicitly about sex. And so we have a policy where we warn parents about that. So if you're like, wow, you're really sex oriented and science is weird. Yes, for about one lesson per year. A tiny boy tree mates with a tiny girl tree with a little help from a sugar crazed bug. Now, the part at the end of that, the little help from a sugar crazed bug, was frankly the part that they all knew about plants have sex, although they did not know that plants have sex. um, and you can do it without a fruit. You can do it, in fact, without a flower. So honestly, even to say which part of the plant makes the seed, like you're already making a giant error. Like ferns don't do this. Well, ferns don't have seeds; they have spores. Okay, this gets weirder. Um, but so they understand that part. But what they didn't understand is that an apple is really an upside down pregnant flower, right? Like this is the actual science behind this. I had a blog post about this recently. I think that got into this, and like all of this focus on like what are the exact terms for the anther and the filament and the stigma and the style. Which, to be clear, I did not see this platform doing, but I have. But like it exemplifies the worst aspects of like let's focus on these details. They obscure the big picture of this, and they totally obscure this utterly bizarre thing whereby it turns out that plants, this is usually illustrated in ferns because you can see it in ferns more easily, but all plants go through this double generation thing where you have like an adult tree and then an adult that is in most in flowering plants, it's what we call pollen. A pollen grain is not sperm. It is, in fact, the child of the parent tree. It is the next generation. It is an organism all in its own. And then the next generation, its generation is a big one and a small one. Sorry, I'm going into these details, and I probably should not be. But
Yeah, but
it's
that's cool.
it's to
Mhm.
say the point that like when you actually study botany, and you can study it and you can explain it to fifth graders, because I did this with third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth graders, right? I had 6-year-olds doing this class, and they can understand it. But the kind of sort of traditionalist learning that IXL is doing, from my bare sampling of this, I would call a word that I'm not going to use in this recording. I would call it worse than garbage.
But but I maybe I can generalize this a bit.
Hmm.
This is that you gave a specific example
Yeah.
in, and one could reply, okay, we can improve the content of the platform, right? And that's true. I mean, they could have something revised by, science experts or whatever. And that would be interesting to do. And they are capable of changing their own model, as you said, to evolve it, right? But maybe here there is also something more structural behind what you what you are what you're saying. And the idea is that so far we have separated at the beginning of our conversation, getting knowledge, right,
Hmm.
and caring.
Yeah.
And you can separate those. I mean, schools have been doing this for centuries. But the idea is also that when you try to teach, having caring in mind, so having, the answer to the question, why is this worth learning? What you can do is that you also can um, take the world and the academics more seriously
Yeah.
and go into detail
Yeah.
and find strong questions,
Yeah.
difficult questions, and
Yeah.
not get lost in superficial and maybe also misguiding pieces of information. And
Yeah.
what you did so far is an example of that,
Yeah.
because your
Thanks.
need was to ask yourself the question, why, what is marvelous, what is, crazy, what is incredible about the way in which plants reproduce, right? And through that, you did your own research, like your team, and you designed that. Okay. Instead, if you start from another question, which is only how could I get them know the essential pieces
Yeah.
of information in the quickest way possible, only that, it's easier that you lose this kind of depth in
Yeah.
teaching and learning. It's not
Yeah.
necessary, it's easier. So
Yeah.
behind your example, to me, there's not only a specific scientific issue, it's also a pedagogical, educational, wider one. Um, that has to do with what I wanted to tell you before in terms of what's your goal, what's your aims of education. That's another
Yeah.
concept. Um, yeah, so that's a problem, right? Um, when you focus I mean, if you focus on the complexity and the beauty of the world, it's easier for you to take the world seriously
Yes.
and to have quality education and go also deeper in knowledge.
Yes.
That's the point.
Which
That's
is
the
a
point.
tragedy of like how when we say like you should fall in love with the world, that comes across to people as, oh, floofy, you're not really serious. No, it's that no one
No,
else is being serious about this, and it makes me
exactly.
cry myself to bed. It's that I look at all of these like best practices science curriculum or curricula or social studies curriculums, and I just like this. I feel like this is utter crap. This is absolutely missing the best things. I know sometimes I know the people who are making these, right? Like I know how they think, and they don't have any appreciation for what the actual scientific like process of discovery has been, or where modern botany or any of the academic fields has actually gotten us. They're just parroting these phrases back, and it is a fake education. When you can, my fear in all of this is that like if you do Alpha School does terrible ordinary. I just, by the way, sent an email to your next appointment apologizing to her that you will be 5 minutes late. uh yeah. I see your keyboard right now, but that gives us exactly 0 minutes left. My fear is that Alpha School is presently doing the terrible model of education as wonderfully as it can be done, or as quickly and as powerfully. Maybe not the word. Maybe the word "wonderfully" is not what I would want to bring into that. But like as well as it can be done. But it's lipstick on a pig, or it's I don't know. It's a super pig, but it's not a child. um, I feel very strongly that the methods that Alpha School has been bringing to maybe perfection has at least been advancing beyond what anybody else seems to have been able to do so far, could be infused with Egan education. They could be infected and infused with Egan education. And without changing the overall, everything that they're doing, the IXL curriculum could be changed. And there are probably other differences, other changes we might want to make or not too. But like you could Eganize the academics part, and then you would have in truth one of the greatest educations the world had ever seen. You would end up producing polymaths on the regular.
In fact, if you take it from the other side, the feelings I had reading this, um, with respect and try to be intellectually humble enough not to just dismiss the thing because I mean they pay kids, right? No, try to be serious, right? Is indeed that there are some features that they have that in an Egan micro school I'd like to have.
Yeah.
If not the same, there should be a way to answer to the questions they answer that we should be able to provide. If
Yeah.
not the same answer, an alternative answer, like to fight against the forgetting curve, to work on
Yeah.
one-on-one feedback, to focus so much. Well, that's extremely cool. I mean it and useful.
Yeah.
Um, if infused with something more, and philosophically, I could say if embedded within um, wider and richer picture of what good education is. To come back to the beginning, right? It's
Yeah.
the image of the pig you had is exactly what happens if you don't clarify your aims and you go, with your head down in effectiveness without thinking, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah.
Um, um, if we think about what we are doing, which is we want, to to fall in love with the beauty and the complexity of the world with intellectual rigor, then all the techniques they have, also the separation morning afternoon, for example, um, they can be extremely powerful and useful. So
Yeah.
there is room for dialogue
Yeah.
with it's not but if you claim instead that they are covering everything, it can be also frightening. I mean, I understand those who can feel frightened or intimidated, not intimidated, I mean, scared by this model because it misses some essential things in my head. So,
How do we want to close? Do we want to
mhm,
just say that they are doing really important here? I'll is that your closing statement? Because I can give mine.
go on.
Great. I will just say that what they are doing, I feel bad about my lipstick on a pig thing before. I'm not going to go back and edit that out, but because I'm lazy and I don't like editing videos. But I will say that they are doing what they are doing is some of the most seems to be some of the most important work in educational innovation. And this is even true if in the end of the day at the end of the day they end up failing. Somebody needs to be running this experiment. Somebody needs to be seeing how can we get through the stuff quickly in a way that the students actually retain it. This is beautiful and powerful embracing. And as somebody who wants to make a major change in how education works, like I feel humbled by the fact that they have already had this much success
Yeah.
in this. I will say that I think that the potential for even in the for the things that only they care about, the ability to massively improve that seems to be clear to me about how that can be accomplished. And I would love to have a conversation with any of them about that. All right.
Close.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, everybody, thank you for watching this. Alessandro, thank you as always for chatting. I will see you on the other side of my vacation to Michigan. All right. Bye, friend. Thanks.